There we go. Here they all come. Hello, hello,
Welcome,
hello.
welcome.
Hope you all are having a great day. Oh man, I forgot. You gotta pay attention. Move that over here. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Hey, I'm wearing a hoodie, but I don't need to today. It's nice and warm out.
I heard it's beautiful up there. I
Yeah.
heard yesterday was a little chilly, but then it became nicer, huh?
Oh yeah. Nice and I think we got 65 and feeling good. I
I
know it's
like
like
that.
probably 75, 80 down there, but whatever.
I actually have the AC on right now.
All right. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome in. Welcome in. Whether you're watching over on Facebook or over here on Zoom, let us know where you're tuning in from. Are you in Ohio? I'm in Ohio. Mark's in Florida. Are you somewhere else? Let us know. Put it in the chat. We want to know. This is an interactive Zoom, so you can answer. We got Central Florida. Okay, okay. And then when I mean interactive Zoom, this is a time for you to get answers from a very experienced real estate professional, which is Mark. And Mark is crushing it in the seller financing space, creative financing, whatever you want to call it. Mark's done it probably, right, Mark?
You can call it creative, you can call it exactly what you said. You can call it whatever you want. I like calling it seller financing strategies because that's really what it comes down to. But yeah, creative financing is the buzzword these days. But it's funny how the terminology of these things change over a couple of years. People come up with a different terminology for the same strategy and they just spin it and market it a little differently. That's really what happens. We used to call them, back in the day, we used to call them sandwiches. Now they call them wraps. So it kind of
Going from
evolves
one
over
food to
time.
the other.
Exactly. It's the same. It's the same concept. You're just buying a property through a seller financing strategy. If it's a subject to, or if it's a sandwich lease option, agreement for deed, land contract, or straight seller financing where the seller holds the note. That's really what it comes down to. But I love it. And this market is prime, 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 prime. And it's like almost taking candy from a baby in this market right now with sellers. Just kind of the hard part is the tricky part is making the numbers work right now in certain markets. That's the tricky part because the interest rates and the price are so high. When you go ahead and run the numbers in the PITI, the numbers kind of hurt a little bit. So, all right, I like it. We are getting questions, so bring those questions in.
Yep, go ahead and drop them in or raise your hand. We like that you put them in a chat, but also you can also just ask face to face. Turn your camera on, turn your mic on. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but it's just better. It just helps us understand where you're at. Um, when it comes to building the relationship with people, also it helps seeing their face, seeing if they understand what you're talking about, understanding that. So we want to make sure that we can see you. Mark can kind of like, I mean, Mark's going to talk about how to read a seller sometimes too, and all that, because you got to be able to read the people when it comes to certain things, and he's got to be able to read you to make sure you understand it properly before he moves on to the next subject. So if you guys turn on your camera, that would be awesome. We got New Jersey, but from Dallas. All right. We got Renee's from, I think she said Central Florida. Yep. Matthew from Virginia, North Carolina, Southern Virginia, North Carolina. Okay, awesome, awesome. Welcome in, everybody. All right, Mark, there's already a question. Renee, you don't have to, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself. But I want to ask it for you, but you can engage with Mark. How do you get approved, or how do buyers get approved for it?
Hi, good evening, Mark. How are you? How's everyone
Doing very
doing
well, and
tonight?
you? Pleasure
I'm
meeting
fine,
you.
thank you. Yeah, so basically I had my first creative finance closing January the 28th of this year. I represented the seller though, and it was a wholesaler that purchased it. So they purchased it subject to, and then they sold it to, I guess investors that are currently buying right now and renting properties out. So my question is, what if like I know my one of my coach, they currently help buyers get a home through creative financing. So how would that process look like as a buyer?
Great question. Also, I'm buying deals, so make sure you come my way too as well. So, and I'm also buying mobile home parks if you ever come across like that, nationwide 75 pads plus. So there's a
Oh yeah.
lot of if you're selling the property to a buyer that's going to be living it as a homestead buyer, there's a lot of several consumer protection regulations. That's why a lot of people want to sell it to investors, because if you sell it to an investor, then you're exempt. But if you're selling it to a buyer, you're depending on, you have the Dodd-Frank Act, you have the RESPA Act, you have the SAFE Act, then each state has their own type of regulations. So there's consumer protection regulations to protect that homestead buyer to put in a property. What happened was years ago, in 2003 to 2005, um, people were just taking their large down payment in like 30,000, 50,000, 80,000, whatever it may be, and knowing the end buyer could not pay that payment, and it actually happened in Florida. Um, they would go ahead and take that property back after 3 to 4 months that they stopped paying and just turn around and redo it. Those guys actually went to jail. They deserve it. So there's been a lot of different protection regulations put in place. The key to it is you need to make sure that the homestead buyer can afford that property, and you should use a third-party licensed RMLO, licensed mortgage loan originator. Now there is a bill, there's a group called Consumer Seller Financing Coalition.org. It's kind of the association for us investors in the seller financing space. So you can always know the different regulations. And we're just raising capital now because we have a lobbyist that we're trying to get a bill through where we could do 24 deals a year without having to use a third party license RMLO with the regulations. But you still need to qualify them, make sure they can qualify. The key to it is follow like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines of the debt to income ratio. We don't care about the credit, but you have to document, and that's why it's good to use a license. I like using what's called Madison Management Services. They're actually a loan servicing company for seller financing, but they also have another division where they have a team of loan originators that can underwrite your files for you. Now, um, if you're selling it to a buyer on a lease option, then you're exempt. When Dodd-Frank came out with the regulations in 2014, there was a lot of talk about, hey, that was included, and that's included, but right now it's not included. What's included is whenever there's an interest rate payment, down payment, that's considered financing. Even if you structure it as an agreement for deed or land contract, that could be, you have to qualify through them through a licensed RMLO. These are for homestead buyers, people that are going to living into it as their primary residence. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, please. It does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people, a lot of these guys will sell it to investors because they're totally exempt out of that. But
Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of wholesalers come in and getting the properties and then wholesaling it over to like an investor, like you said.
yeah. So what blows my mind away is I don't know why. Let me ask you a question. What's your average? What do you see out there you think is the average wholesale fee on that type of deal?
Um, on those type of deals, there it's like 15%
You think 15% of what?
of the price that they're selling it for.
You really see them getting that much money? Like say it's a $400,000, you're seeing at 50, you're seeing them getting a $60,000 assignment fee?
The last one that I just did, now I don't know if it's true because I didn't see on their end. They paid all of my compensation and everything. But the realtor that was on it, when I asked them because I wanted to get more information so I can look into it, he was telling me that it was good and that they charge like 15% finder's fee for each deal.
Right, that's the difference. Finder's fee of what they generate on a fee. So let's say, do you, is anybody in here doing wholesaling on sub twos to seller financing? Can anybody answer this question? If anybody's in here?
Hey, Mark, I think I can.
All right, Matt. Pleasure meeting you.
Hey, it's nice meeting you. So I don't see anybody getting 15% usually. It tends to be like 10% assignment, and that's usually if the property has equity. I think it was more along the lines of what you were saying. They're probably getting 15% of the assignment. So if the person's making $10,000, they're getting 15% of that for the finder's fee.
Okay. Is that what you're getting? Have you gotten that yourself?
Well, I actually typically buy with the properties that I'm looking for. I'm actually working on my first wholesale deal now. It's not really my thing. I don't like the wholesaling part of it. So I found a partner or partners, and what I do is I buy the property 50% with them. I find the deal and manage the property, and they bring the finances in. And with one of my partners, I actually get paid up front for this, depending on how much equity is in the property. And that's kind of why I chimed in, is because you can definitely assign these to investors, but I get 15% is a lot. Like it would have to have a lot of equity in there, or at least a good bit of equity for somebody to want to put 15% of the price of the home in.
Even 10% is pretty steep.
Yeah, 10%.
Right.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
actually had a lot of people complain at 10%.
Yeah. I don't see too much out there at 10%. What I see the average is roughly about $10,000 to $15,000. That's what I usually see in an average assignment fee on these.
Yeah, I would agree that, even 5,000 is okay. Like I'm not mad if somebody's like, "Hey man, I'll give you 4,000," especially if the property doesn't have equity or something. If it has a lot of equity, then it can, potentially be more than 10 or 15, but like you're saying, I think 10 or 15 is pretty reasonable.
Well, what blows me away is I had a girl in my mentorship program, and she had this property in Texas, and it needed roughly about $35,000 worth of work, 36,000 somewhere in that area, and she had her capital tied up in a fix and flip. So she was going to say, okay, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an assignment fee. I'm like, okay, what are you going to assign it for? She said, I'm going to market it for $15,000 assignment fee. Okay. When it's all said and done, when you go back and forth negotiating, what do you think? I asked her what she said she's going to get. She said roughly between 8 to 10,000. And sometimes they even go lower than that, like you said, 5,000. What blew me away is she was going to do an assignment on that deal, roughly say $10,000 she was going to get. We went through the deal analysis on it. She was going to make $171,000 over 5 years instead of walking away with that $5,000, $10,000, whatever you want to call it. It just blew me away because the way how I told her how to do it, she got her upfront fee. She ended up making about $12,000 on the front end, cash flowing about $750 a month on over 60 months on that thing. And then when they're going to pay it off in arrears, she was going to get another like close to $90,000 on that. So
Wow.
she was going to make $171,000 on that over 5 years. And she still made the same amount of money up front. That's what blows me away. It's just because
Yeah.
they don't understand it. They just see, all right, I'll lock it up and sell the contract. But if you stay in the deal, you could actually make more money. The problem is where most of them run into, you do need a little bit of capital. So
Yeah.
if that end buyer stops paying, you have to step up to the plate and make the payments. That's why when subject twos were originally designed, they were always designed for investors to stay in the middle. They weren't designed in assignments. And that's what's happening where a lot of states are starting to come down because they're getting complaints from attorney generals that the end buyers stop making payments, and then the seller's credit is getting destroyed. So that's kind of what's been happening a little bit. But you stay in the middle, you control it. What I always do is whatever your end buyer's capital they put down, I like to hold 3 to 4 months reserves
Yes.
of whatever the monthly payment is. What's that?
I was going to say, yes, that's exactly what I was actually going to say is holding, 2 to 3 months of reserves to make sure that you can make the payments in case of a vacancy. Um, because I've also noticed what you're saying, where people will come into the property, they'll sell the property, and then the end buyer's not able to make the payments, and it's kind of a sticky situation happening between the original owner and the new, I guess you could say, end buyer.
Correct. Yep. I doesn't I always how I do my deals, I negotiate the lowest down payment as possible with my seller, give myself a long due diligence period, roughly 45, 60 days. I tell them what I'm going to do. I go get my end buyer and I use my end buyer's capital to buy the property. That's how I do my deals. I get into these with zero money down, maybe $100 to lock it up. So, Renee, did that answer? I'm going to jump back to her. Did that answer your question, Renee, on that?
Yes, please. It did. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Cool.
We like $0 down
Yeah.
or $100 down.
Yeah, well, Matt's got the right strategy too. He's got capital partners. That's definitely another one. You need to have multiple type of strategies to take deals down, and that's absolutely I use that strategy all the time. Getting capital partners. Where Matt, where did you get your capital partners from?
So I actually locked up a subject to deal like all these other knuckleheads. I'm going to go ahead and call myself a knucklehead. So I went out here, got the deal locked up, and I'm buying them time. I actually postponed it. I didn't have the capital, so I'm looking for a end buyer. All of the people had an issue with the tenant living in the property, so they wanted me to kick them out, and it was right, a month away from Christmas. I couldn't do it. I literally didn't have the heart. So I'm calling all over trying to find partners or buyers, and nobody's interested. I had found one guy who told me he wasn't interested, but the following day was the auction date, or not the auction date, but the day before the auction date. I'm sorry. So I reach out to the attorney and I'm trying my best to get it closed. I'm reaching out to this guy that I've never met before and kind of just talking to him. And he texted me a message and said, less talking and more doing. So I spent 6 hours calling the foreclosure attorney until eventually they quite literally got so tired of me calling. They picked up the phone and said, look, man, we're going to give you 60 days. Please stop calling us. I was calling on 3 different devices at one point. So that happened. I called the investor back and I was like, hey, man, I just want to say thank you for texting me because I honestly just needed somebody to talk to. It was a really rough day. And he responds and was like, actually, Matt, a lot of people would have given up on this deal as soon as they realized they weren't going to make money. You offered to sell me the deal for no money at all just to help these people and their family. He was like, I'm willing to invest on this property and one's going forward. And that's kind of how that happened. It wasn't really somewhere that I searched. It kind of just came to me.
That's awesome, man. That's how you do it. A lot of times people like they call up a bank and it's getting ready to foreclosure and they're like, and they have an auction date and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're too late." You just got to hang up the phone and keep calling back because you will get to the person that knows the contact of how to postpone that foreclosure. Most of those people have no clue how to do it. They're just customer service. They could be overseas or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So you just got to be persistent, keep calling and calling and calling. That's the name of the game. So
Yes.
I like it. Yep. So what
And
I like to do is I like to buy through a subject to seller financing, sell it on a lease option, have them put a nice down payment. You can't go crazy with the down payment because if they start putting more than 10%, the state will look at that as considered what's called equitable interest, and then they actually have to have more control of the deed of it. So that's why you got to be careful. Usually about 5 to 7% down on lease options, and then you use that money to buy the property through a sub two, stay in the middle, and just create that arbitrage. That's what I love
awesome.
doing. I've done
Awesome.
thousands of I've done thousands of properties like that.
That was an amazing tip. The 10% thing I've never heard before. So thank you for that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. It's because if you go into a and especially you got to be careful doing lease options in some of these states that are not landlord friendly. Many years ago, I got my butt handed to me in a I don't want to get political, but it was a not a landlord friendly state.
Yeah.
And what happened was when you do a lease option to your end buyer, you usually do a purchase and sale and a lease agreement. So if your end buyer defaults and they go and usually want to go in and evict using just a lease agreement, well, what happened was in the state, when you go through an eviction, the state automatically appoints legal aid at the state's cost. And I could have paid these people $10,000 to leave, and my attorney said, "Oh, don't worry about it." Well, what happened was my attorney got his ass handed to him in court because they went in there in front of the judge and they said, "Hey, Your Honor, they were trying to do an eviction process on this. So they had the purchase and sale agreement and we have the lease agreement. Can we throw out the purchase and sale agreement since that's what they're trying to do? They're trying to do the eviction." So what happened was both attorneys, the legal aid and my attorneys, agreed to it, and the judge agreed to it. They threw out the purchase and sale contract, and they went in just with the lease eviction. Well, then what happened was then comes landlord tenant law. Then at that point, the landlord is responsible for all maintenance and repairs. All of a sudden, they came up with over $25,000 of supposedly receipts that they fixed on the property. So I had to reimburse them that. And then it was also cold in wintertime when it was November, and they got to stay there until the end of July. I'm sorry, to end April 1st for rent free. So it cost me about $47,000 when it was all said and done. So just be
Wow.
careful of doing that in certain states on that. So and make sure if you're doing that and you're in a state like that, I would recommend just giving them cash for keys. I could give them 10K and walked away on that deal. I've done that in other states, but I try to if you have a really, really good relationship with the people that you put into the property and you're really good at screening the people and underwriting the people, you always want to underwrite, make sure don't just throw somebody in there because you're desperate because you can't find a buyer. Take your time because it could cost you a lot more money. But in states like Florida, it's really easy to get somebody out in about 45 days on a lease option. But again, if you're having them put a lot of money down that end buyer and you're doing a lease option and it goes to court, you could be looked at as what's called predatory, a predatory investor. That's what they call it. The judge will call it a predatory investor on that. So just heads up on that one. If you do that,
Got
then I would look at another exit strategy. What I do, what's called an agreement for deed. Then they have a little bit control of the contract. I mean, the control of a little bit more what's called equitable interest at that time. So, Matt, you want to jump in? I see. Matt, did I answer
Yep.
your question before we go on?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I was just listening to that. That was insane. I actually need to look at a property that I'm currently doing an eviction on to make sure that that's not going to be a problem with us and this property. So I really appreciate that information.
What happens now? Now, I'm not an attorney,
Yes.
so but
Yeah, I
what
got
they do,
you.
but what we tend to do nowadays is, let's say you can do a couple ways. Say you want $2,500 a month in market rent. Okay. Well, what you could do is what I've done. I'm saying I bump it up to 2,700 or 2,750, and I give them $250 credit back towards maintenance and repairs. So if anything happened, it showed they got credit. Now, also I've seen people say, okay, the purchase price is originally um, $325,000, right? But they really want to sell it for 300. But we're gonna on the contract, we're selling it for $325,000, and they're giving them a $25,000 credit of the purchase price for maintenance and repairs. So
Understood.
they just does that kind of make sense?
Yes,
Again, I'm
yes,
not an
sir.
attorney. I'm not an
Yes, sir.
attorney. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
what I've seen. Okay.
Got you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. We got James has his hand raised. You got a question, James?
I do. Thanks a lot, guys. And this is my first call tonight. So thanks for having me on. First question I have is again, you talked about the 5 to 7% down payment for that lease option. Do you, when you're getting that, how long is your period for the contract with the actual seller? Or do you have to go back and extend that contract with the original seller that you're doing that lease option through so that you can get that 5 to 7% when you're
So you're,
working with
you're
the
buying the property in a lease option, you're saying?
I'm buying the property and then, well, yes, I'm doing it on the lease option. That's correct. And
You got to look.
usually
Yep,
huh?
I got you. Go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead with it because that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because like when you say you find somebody that wants to rent that to lease that property from you, and you have maybe a 15 to 20 day window in your original contract, do you go back and negotiate more time on the original contract with the sellers so that you get that 5 to 7% down payment from the person that wants to come in on the property? Or do you have enough time frame built into the original contract that you don't worry about that?
That's typically the second part. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just letting you know how I do
Yeah.
mine. I try to get as long as contract as possible with my buyer to be able to control it. Now, you got to be careful of the state. Certain states, like Texas, you can only do 1 year.
Okay.
That's why it's hard to do those, and you can't do sandwiches. You actually have to be the seller if you're trying to sell it in Texas. So Texas is very challenging, and it could be a felony in Texas if you're trying to lease a property that you actually don't have the deed to, or you don't have on that, even though you have it by contract. So you got to look at states because certain states will only allow you to do maybe 2 years, 3 years. Some will do 5 years. So whatever state you're doing that in, you have to look at that. The other thing you need to pay attention to is Florida is a prime example of this one. Again, I'm not an attorney, but sometimes like I've negotiated contracts where I only had to put like 1 month's rent down before
Mhm.
to be able to lock it up.
Mhm.
Um, and let's say that I'm buying that property for 200, let's say 250,000, and the market rent's $1,500. Well, and I've seen this happen. The property value goes up, and now the seller wants to back out of that contract. and they hire an attorney, and then an attorney is going to find a loophole to get out of that. And I've seen a loophole where a seller's got out of it. In the state of Florida, they have what's called an option. Guys, an option fee. In the state of Florida, it has to be a minimum of 1% down. If they anything less than that, then that contract's valid, and the seller can get out of the contract. And I've seen that happen one time. So what I usually do is I always tell them I'm doing first, last, and like security to get into the property on a lease option. But then I tell them that. But then when I do the contract, I lump it all into an option fee, and I usually I do 1 month's free, or I'll say I give 1 month's free. Well, they'll say I didn't say promise. Well, I told you I'm giving first, last, and security. Here's a dollar amount. I'm putting in an option fee because if anything happens and I don't buy the property, that money's non-refundable to me and it comes back to you. That's how I kind of work through that process.
Oh, okay. That's pretty smooth. Do you find a lot of people or buyers balk at that, or once you explain it to them, they're okay with that option?
The buyers, your end buyer,
Yeah.
bulk at what? Because we're just talking about the seller side. We weren't talking about the buyer. What
I'm
were you
sorry.
referring to?
I meant
No
the
problem.
seller side. My problem.
Sure. The balk at what? The low down payment?
Yeah, well, you said you'll do this option fee, and you sandwich it.
Yeah. Well, I just explain it the right way when I do the option fee. Because you want an option fee to make that agreement binding.
Mhm.
I just tell them, hey, in my negotiating, I usually do first and last month as my deposit because I'm
Okay.
taking care of the maintenance and repairs. That's usually how I go into my strategy on that. And then whatever that dollar amount is, I just put it in as an option fee. The dollar amount is an option fee to them. So, and it's non-refundable. And I make that part big, non-refundable. When I see that, hey, I'm putting this money down, that $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it is, that's non-refundable. So if I stop making payments, I have people balk a little bit. Hey, I promised I didn't offer a 1 month payment. So you have to explain it ahead of time when you're going through it. You just don't want them to read it and say, oh, what is this? I didn't offer this. So if you're ahead of it and you explain it correctly, you don't have that problem.
Thank you. Thanks for clarification. Appreciate that.
Awesome.
I love
Just
that's
real quick,
that's how I started out. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
I want to interrupt real quick. So Mark's dropping tons of knowledge, but he does this not only this on Mondays, he does it on Tuesdays and throughout the whole week in his private mastermind that he has. If you would like more information of that, we have a link. I just put it in the chat. Just schedule a call and we'll hop on a call with you to see if it's a good fit for you. We have Tommy and Reese. I saw Reese in here. I don't know if Tommy's in here right now, but they are there to answer just a couple questions, ask you a couple questions to see if the program's right for you. We want to make sure it's a good fit for you before we push you through to either me or Mark to talk to you about the program. So just if you would like more information about learning more from Mark, Mark is a very experienced real estate investor. I mean, he's done how many millions of dollars?
Yeah, I've done over 500 million. I started, it's going to be, I hate to say it, I'm going to show my age here. This spring's going to be 30 years.
Wow. That's all right, man.
Yeah.
30. And I started out with a lease option. That's my original strategy. And then I went into subject twos. Actually, I did my first deal when I was 19. But then I got into the corporate world. Then I jumped back in at the age of 25. So I've been nonstop. So I love it. It's great.
So if you want to see if his program's a good fit for you, just schedule a call. It's a 15-minute call, no sales, nothing pressured on that call or anything. Just see if it's a good fit for you. It doesn't hurt to find out, because you always got to invest in yourself to learn more. That's what I've learned is make sure I'm learning somehow, some way, always. All right. Just throw that out there. Cool. Anybody else have questions? Taylor, do you have a question?
I feel like my question is a little more elementary because I'm new to the subject, but I was just curious how you would actually not how everybody seems to be asking about how to facilitate these, but I'm just curious about how you more so structure it in terms of come up with the numbers. I was telling Matt earlier that I always read Rich Dad Poor Dad like once a year because it's a great kick in the butt. And one thing that Robert Kiyosaki used to love to do in his early days before he made it to the top to kickstart his real estate holdings was to find the cheaper homes in the neighborhood and almost wholesale them, but offer them as the seller finance or the rent to own. And I understand that there's different terms for these things. So I'm just I probably buy and renovate one property a month at this point, and I'm going to try to probably double that next year. And I would love to try to implement this as a strategy because now I either just refinance them and keep them or sell them off. But I think this is a good strategy as well to add to the playbook. But I know nothing about it, so I was just wondering how you come about making the decision on how to do that.
So I call it a tool in a tool belt. That's just each strategy is a separate tool in a sense. That's kind of, but you're right. It's smart adding more to your arsenal. So when you look at a deal, because it may not work, the wholesale or your fix and flip numbers, it may not work. So there's different alternative ways of doing it. You can also do what's called a novation. That's another great one where you actually keep, you're probably familiar with that strategy then. So that's another
Yeah.
good one as well. So for me, how I determine it is, in like that deal that I was talking about before with the girl where it needed $35,000 work. Well, what we did is we went out there and we found a handyman to do the work because she didn't have the capital. Her capital is tied up in another project. If you have capital, that's great. Um, but so in that particular one, I said, hey, go ahead and market it and tell the person, your buyers, normally you're going to fix it up. It needs this work, and you're going to look once you have it ready. I'm looking for, roughly $50,000 to $60,000 down, but it needs roughly about $35,000 worth of work. If you're handy with it, instead of that, I'll take $12,000 or $15,000 down. So she ended up finding somebody that was handy, and they could do the work themselves at a much cheaper cost. Um, so because we went through the deal analysis. So what we do is, there's a video in the seller financing group under featured. I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you can go back and watch it. We had a call like this, and one of my members was in here, and we actually went through some numbers, deal analysis. So what we do is we go through the numbers, and then we look at all the different exit strategy of the numbers. What makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Um, some markets, seller financing doesn't make sense because the PITI is too high. So then we look at maybe doing a sandwich lease option. So it depends on the market. The other thing that really takes place, in one of the biggest things of most of all, is besides the numbers, because once you understand the strategy, you go through the numbers, it's just once you've done like 3 of them, you have it down.
Mhm.
The key to it is understanding. The key to it is really building the rapport with the seller. That is really where the key to it is. Oops, sorry about that. The key is to understand the seller, because the reason why they're going to do seller financing, you got to think of it like this, and I repeat a lot. It's like a marriage. You're in a contract with these people for 3, 5, 7, 10, 30 years, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So the first time I talk to them, 80% of my phone calls are building rapport with them, getting to know them, and I want them to get to know me. I had a deal, we talked about it a few times, but this gentleman, he was open to seller financing, free and clear. He only wanted $120,000 for this home, but he wanted $30,000 down. Didn't make sense. Built a rapport with him. I asked him how many offers that he had. He said he got about 12 to roughly about 12 offers, all from investors. And the reason why he didn't go with it is because they all were beating him up on the down payment. But I got to know why he was selling. He needed money for a camper, and he was going camping. And I took him on a journey, what he's going to be doing, have him visualize him camping. I structured it, instead of giving him $30,000 down, I gave him $3,500 down. I told him to go take a loan out because he had good credit, take a loan out for the camper for $25,000. And on the 20th of every month, we'll go ahead and make the payments on his behalf. So I got that deal for $3,500 down. We're paying the camper on the 20th of every month, and we're still cash flowing $475 a month on that property. So I got to know him and built a rapport. He got to know me. I got to know his children, his dog, his credit, everything about it, his football team. So that's where you get those really low down payments. But for you, um, you would want to probably buy. How are you getting the rehab? Are you doing hard money, or do you have how are you structuring that?
Yeah, right now just private lending.
Okay. So what I done and stuff like yours is I would look if it's a low interest rate and I want to keep that payment, and I needed $30,000 to $50,000, depending on what my strategy is. You could bring that private capital, fix it, and then you could sell it through seller financing, stay in the middle,
Mhm.
and that down payment, give that partner, that capital partner back, or you can give him a part of the deal and give him some monthly payments on it too. There's so many different ways that you can structure it. Like how I do it, we call it gap funding. Um, Typically on those type of deals, I like to try to use my end buyer's capital and then stay in the middle and create the arbitrage. On
Mhm.
something like that, I would sell maybe through another seller financing strategy if they're putting that much capital down, or if they're putting money into the property. I wouldn't sell it in a lease option because at that point that you got to give them a little bit of equitable interest, because if they put $50,000 down a property, or even if they fix it and they default and you go in front of the judge and you're saying, hey, judge, they gave me all this money to fix my property up, the deeds in my name, the judge is going to look at you like you're crazy. So you have to understand those different when you're doing an extra strategy on that stuff. But I think it's great going through there, having an arsenal and just taking down these other deals and be able to do less capital.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's also probably the epitome of creative financing with that camper one. That's hilarious, but I'm glad I'm glad you figured something out.
Yeah, it's and what's cool is once you start doing these things, you start coming up with other ways and other strategies. About 5 years ago, I did a deal in North Carolina. The gentleman had a piece of land that was worth 1.5 million. He wanted this piece of land. I don't remember how many acres, but it was on public water and sewer, and it had no mortgage. And instead of that seller getting 1.5, he ended up getting 3.1 for that deal. I brought a builder developer in, and what we did is we used the land as leverage to do the entitlement, and we would build 5 homes at a time. We put 49 homes in there, and he ended up getting 3.1 million. So it was a win for everybody. We got in with no money down. We used the land as a leverage, and we would only do 5 homes at a time, so we didn't have to keep. That's how we ended up doing it. We got the money for the entitlement to get everything approved, and then we would do 5 homes at a time, and you could do some pre-sales on it as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That was a very good deal, man. Very good deal, man. You're a mastermind on that. Do you do a lot of raps, or what's your thoughts on those raps, Mark?
Um, I would rather sell them on a contract for deed or land contract. I have done wraps, especially if it's depends on who the buyer is and depends on how much capital they put down. It's really it comes down to. The more capital, then I'll probably do more of a wrap situation. Um, the less capital, then and it also depends on the state too.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. I know. Um,
So, Mark, you said in Texas you cannot do seller finance?
You can. Texas is very big for subject twos. It's hard to do lease options and land contracts in Texas because of the regulations there. Again, I'm not an attorney. I don't do business in Texas for that reason. I knows, but I will do a subject to in Texas.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions? Feel free to ask away. Taylor, are you looking for cash flow?
Uh,
For creative deals that you can that you can wrap is, I guess, is what I'm asking. That's what Matt. Matt, can you go
well,
ahead and clarify that?
yeah, what was the second part?
Yeah, sorry about my broken English there. So I guess my question is, why are you looking for properties that you can get for, like, I guess a wrap deal or do a wrap deal with? I know that you were asking Mark, that you're trying to have more knowledge as far as finding wrap deals and doing them. And I guess my question is, what's the reason behind that?
Uh, okay, forgive me. What's a wrap deal?
Um, Kind of what Mark's
He
been
didn't. I
talking
don't. He
about
was.
and all of us.
Yeah, I don't think he was talking about the rap, but somebody else was.
Oh, that I was
Okay,
talking
I
about
thought he was referring to deals that he could get into and just turn around and lease to somebody else, like doing a lease option on properties.
Well,
Would-
just to give a general idea of what I give, just to see if the question fits me. I buy properties at a discount, at like most investors, for the value add situation, and I provide the value, and then I either sell them or refinance them and keep them as rental properties. That's it. And I think rent to own, lease options, and all these different things that you guys are discussing is just a good another tool to add to my exit strategy belt, but I know nothing about it as of right now.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a question, Mark. What's some of the best ways to find some private investors to fund some of your deals? What would you recommend for some
Sure.
of
What?
those
Yeah.
groups?
What do you? What area do you live in? What's big city near you?
I'm outside of Washington D.C., so I'm in the D.C.
Okay.
Maryland, Virginia area. So we've got a
Sure.
couple of good areas. You got North Carolina we can dip into,
Yep. I
Virginia, and
know that area
obviously,
very well. That's where I
yeah.
started my career back in the Baltimore, D.C. area. I ended up having 107 loan officers up in that area back
Oh,
in the
okay.
day.
Oh
Yep.
yeah,
So,
wow.
yep. So what I've done, there's a lot of different ways, but have anybody here ever been to a convention before at a hotel, like anything like that? Have you ever been, James? Have you ever? What's your James? What's your job that you currently do? Your 9 to 5, or is this your full time thing?
No, I'm 9 to 5. Really, what I do now is I deal in cyber. So I deal in risk management and anything that deals with cyber, right?
Okay.
Controlling and keeping the bad guys out. But
Got it.
while I like that, I like real estate more, right? So
We like
I'm
that
looking.
passive income so we don't have to work. But have you ever been to a convention at a hotel or anything?
I've done a lot of real estate meetups, and some of the people I haven't been able to connect with that will look at
That
doing.
it doesn't have to be real estate. What about in your regular 9 to 5 world?
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of conventions. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you've been at a convention and you're there at you're talking at the convention, after you're done doing the show, where do you guys normally hang out?
Usually maybe go out in the center hallway and try to network with some people. Try to do that. Sometimes they have
Okay.
like a little bar set up. So I'll try to go in and do some networking.
All right. So have you ever been at one where you had to spend a night at the hotel?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And where do you guys go after that party area? Where do you guys hang out?
Usually they'll go do some entertainment, maybe get some eat, or somebody wants to go to a club, or something like that where they're happening. But usually I just try to
But
go.
then everybody comes back, and where do you guys all hang out when you guys all come back to the hotel area?
They probably hang out in that front area, right? They come back in the front area and they kind of sit down and talk, and then everybody, all right, I'm gone,
Sure.
guys. We kind of congregate near the front of the hotel in that little lobby
Got
area.
it. And yeah, and they usually have what's called a lobby bar.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
You know it.
So let me give you a heads up on what I've done. Okay. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. Okay. South Florida. There was a cardiac physician convention at the Ritz-Carlton in Miami.
Right.
I can't get in. I'm not a physician, but I knew it was at the Ritz-Carlton. Guess where I went and sat down and hung out?
Bar.
The lobby bar. Started networking, started talking to people. I ended up raising $475,000.
Wow.
You just had that open up that conversation. That's all you do. It's just saying, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, I do real estate." "Oh, I wish I could do real estate. I just don't have the time." When they say that, ding, ding, ding. Well, I work with people such as yourself where I can put their capital, deploy it, so they can become lenders for you. They could be partners. There's so many different ways you can kind of structure that. You just got to be careful. You can't pitch them a deal the first time because there is some SEC rules and guidelines. Again, I'm not an attorney, so just make sure you're cautious of that. If you're going out there and raising capital and talking to people that you don't know, you have to talk to them at least 3 times. So build a rapport with them, build a conversation with them, and tell them some of the stuff that you've done in the past, and then set up another phone call and to build a relationship. So I treat my private capital in a CRM just like I do my sellers. You want to reach out to them and do the massaging and follow-ups, and I have them connect with me through social media, and I connect with them so I know what's going on with them.
Okay. Thanks for that piece of advice. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Lots of good value tonight.
Absolutely.
Lots of great questions as well. Anybody else have any questions? I think Taylor had one more. I don't know if he's being shy about it.
Do you have one for me?
You're talking about your properties that you have. You're thinking about offering seller financing to somebody, or if it's just that you have properties that are sitting.
Oh yeah, I've got 4 properties sitting on the market right now. My market's not exactly cold, but it has slowed down. Days on market has increased. And I figured I would just execute these contracts with the realtors that I'm using right now and give them some relief and just be like, look, this isn't working. I have different avenues to exit for these properties. And but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know where to begin to even offer. And there's so many. There's a vast amount of Facebook groups and other things that I'm a part of in this area that I could market these properties on, but I don't know, the terminology, the rates that I deserve to offer. And I want to make sure, because there's so many more people out there that are looking for a house to buy where they don't have to go to the bank first, or talk with a lender or even a realtor at that point, and just go straight to the lawyers with a contract. There's probably more than the normal buyer pool that are waiting with their realtors. And I just want to make sure that I can put a property out there with the right numbers and have a deal that not only benefits them, but benefits me more so than just giving somebody a property who doesn't have to go to the bank for the money to get it in the first place. So I just want to make sure that I come out with a win with this strategy. But like I said, I don't even know where to begin. The amount down that I should ask for, the rate, and things like that, and the monthly payment, and how you figure that out. But do you change the title? Who carries the interest and or the insurance and the taxes and stuff like that?
Yeah. What kind of financing do you have currently in place on, let's take one property for an example. What kind of financing do you currently have in place on a property you're trying to sell?
The only thing that I do with my private capital partners right now is interest only. I don't have any other strategies with them. I'm sure I could sit at a table and talk to them about it, but that's the only thing that we've done
Do
so
they
far.
have a balloon? Do they have a balloon that you have to pay it off by a certain period of time?
It's the full capital amount borrowed after, usually 12 months, but I mean it's all negotiable.
So what happens if you put somebody into a property and you have to hold it for 5 years? Are they cool with it? Those investors?
I don't know. I've never asked, but it wouldn't be a good idea for me because I'm sitting there with the same balloon for the whole 5 years, unless it's a crazy cash flow, or like the market's appreciating a lot, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's the key. Yeah, you hope it does. But
Yeah,
if you sell it through a seller financing, you sell it to a homestead buyer, you have to be careful. You can't do a balloon less than 5 years. You can't force them. That's part of the Dodd-Frank. Now you could do a lease option on it.
yeah,
That's a little different. So, but there's there's some consumer regulations there that you have to kind of be a little bit aware of on that stuff. That's why you always want to talk to an RMLO if you're going to do a seller financing to them at the end. Now, what some people will do is there's another whole strategy, another whole animal where you can go ahead and structure that through a seller financing and do what's called like a 70/30, different ways like that. And then you can turn around and sell that first note into the secondary market and use that capital. And then you get that capital, you can pay off some of your private money people back. So that's another whole angle.
okay, yeah. I think in hearing this and voicing that issue myself, I think I have to have to be able to execute that strategy. I have to have a conversation with my lenders currently with those hard money loans and try to figure out a different way to structure it to be able to do something like that. Because as it sits, I'm paying anywhere from 12 to 15 and then 3 points at the end, and it just wouldn't work if I hold on to it too long. And it even sitting on the market, it's already eating at my margins.
Yeah. Well, that you got to put your buyer in there and have your buyer start making those payments so it's not eating. So you want to make sure that will cover it. That's the bottom line. And then technically you want to structure it where you can make that passive income. That's the name of the game. So
Right.
for me, I do when I structure a deal like that, I'm looking for a minimum of $500 a month. I have some more than that, and I have one at like $48 a month cash flow, but I have $109,000 equity on it. I'm okay doing that
Yeah.
for a 30 month,
See, there's
something like
people
that.
who can do the negative carry, and they're in a market that's appreciating so rapidly that it makes that sense. But I'm not in a position to do that, and I'm looking to make the margins as comfortable as possible in deals like these. But
Yeah.
right now, paying 12%, I don't think I could find anybody that would do the deal at the rates that I'm paying for these houses, and it makes sense for them.
Yeah. You just
Can
need
I
to make
chime in
sure
here,
that you're
Mark?
buying them. What's that?
Can I chime in here?
Sure, absolutely.
Would it be, smart or, even possible for him to look into doing like a burst strategy on these deals since he's paying so much in, interest only payments, depending on how much equity he's built in these properties? And if that's something that, fits his investing strategy, couldn't he just use like a DSCR loan if he has 20% equity and refinance these properties to try to save them for himself?
Well, I was under the impression that's what he's currently doing.
It
He
is.
said he has, oh, so he is already with a DSCR lender?
Yes, and Yeah, so I've got multiple properties under my belt as well. The ones that I have sitting on the market just weren't in areas that I wanted to keep them in, that I didn't think would appreciate as much as the ones that I do have. And also, I haven't sold a house in 2 years, and doing the burst strategy for the last 2 years has really not exactly created a lot of capital for me, but created a lot of equity. And I need capital to keep moving and making bigger deals happen. So I've been trying to sell off a few.
I understand that completely. I'm
Yeah.
actually in the same boat right now with
We
low
all are.
capital.
Every
Yeah.
investor, that's us investors. We're all cash poor and all our capital's in there. So it's always, that's kind of why I do the sell-off financing, because you can take some of that down payment. And that's why I like wrapping and creating the note, because you're getting a nice down payment, and then you use that payment to some of the other properties that you hold while you're still generating passive income through your just creating the notes and staying in the middle of the arbitrage. So for like you do like, because you're trying to generate, you're trying to, my goal is trying to get roughly about $10,000 to $15,000 on the front end in my pocket, besides a minimum $500 a month cash flow, sometimes even more than that. And then you keep doing that enough, then there's your if you do 5 properties, there's your $50,000, $60,000 somewhere in that area to go on to your next deal that you want to hold. Now, on multifamily, on the single family, I like buying single family in nice homes and nice markets, because they're easy to find nice buyers and they take care of the property, like a lease option. But then on the multifamily stuff, those are ones I hold. Like I purchased 5 mobile home parks last year. I'm under contract with another mobile home park right now. So those I will hold and use a property manager on. Those are a different strategy. Those I'll bring capital partners in and stuff like that. But on the residential, that's kind of how you fall into it. But once you keep working at it, and people see your deals, they start telling your friends. If it's a good deal, the capital will come.
Hey, let me ask you this, Mark, because Taylor's saying he's trying to get rid of these properties. Have you ever thought about taking those properties and put them in a portfolio and then sell them to a hedge fund?
Me?
Yeah,
No, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
because you were saying like the rates you got, they suck, right? 50, very high. Mark rates are getting at. Maybe that, you want to free up some of your cash. So I was going to ask Mark, I know he's probably done that. So I was listening to what you're saying. I like, why don't you just wrap them up and sell them to a hedge fund? That
Yeah,
would take some of
I
the hit, take that
yeah,
funding
it's
capital.
not a bad idea. I don't sell mine off to hedge funds. I like to hold on my properties.
Okay.
I like the passive income. That's me. So if
Yep.
I want to take some time off, like again, I'm in South Florida right now. I
Yep.
love it this time of year, but in the summer times, I'm out of here. I'm traveling quite a bit.
Ah,
Like last
gotcha.
summer, last summer I was in Tahoe for a month. Um, Out in Seattle, Seattle. The summer before that, I spent 2 summers in Cape Town, South Africa, for about
Wow.
two
Okay.
months. Yeah, and then before that, Portugal for a summer. And before that, the only problem is the time zone difference. You have to start working at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for a few hours.
So when you buy box marks, when do you sit there and say, all right, I have this investment, right? I think I want to get rid of it. When do you get to that point? Or what's your strategy with that? Because you just said you like to hold on, right?
I
Okay, you go.
do, I do.
You also look at
It,
bigger ventures and better projects, right?
yeah, yeah, I mean, I will hold mine unless somebody wants to come along and give me a really nice offer. Like I have a piece of property right now that's in a prime area in the Dollar General, Dollar Street, whatever. They're giving me an offer where I'm like, all right, do I take it or not? Because it's a really prime piece of land right on the main street. And technically, I could that particular one is 13 units. I could technically develop 24 units in there. Just the problem is it's in a state that's really difficult to get zoning and stuff done. It could take 3 years just to go through a project in that state.
Wow.
So that's the only reason why. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards, all right, maybe I sell it and redeploy the capital, take the money and go into another one because of the state. So there's a lot of factors. That's one of the biggest things is the state. Um, and then, I actually, believe it or not, I like blue states sometimes with before with the current administration. There was so much money that was going around. I mean, they were giving me money to do a two bedroom, one bath, 800 square foot. They gave me $35,000 to redo that unit as long as I put a Section 8 in there. So those states, I will underrate it based off of Section 8 income on the multifamily stuff. But the single families, I want in a nice home, nice area because they're usually better. They're the people that want to become homeowners and they take care of the property.
Then that begets another question. You just said about Section 8. That's secure money. What percentage do you do Section 8? Or you said, nah, I don't really mess with it.
I'll look at it if it's a good deal. I underrate it off of Section 8. I won't underrate it off of the current market rent in that area because I know it's guaranteed money and they take care of the property um, in those states. But I also have a mixture in some of those places like that multifamily that I was just talking about. I would say it's 50% Section 8 and the other people are not 50%. So, you know, it's a case by case. It's I don't want to deal with the headaches. That's why I like structuring it through seller financing, and I have property managers handling the other stuff.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Coming down to our last few minutes. Again, if you guys would like to learn more about Mark's coaching sessions, his mastermind, whatever you want to call it, just make sure to schedule a call. Let me post it one more time in here. Just go on this link, schedule a call. Reese or Tommy will hop on a call with you. And guys, if you really want to learn how to do this, make sure to schedule a call. If you want to understand this, the ins and outs, Mark gives you the documents that you need. He gives you everything you need to go out and succeed. So, again, just go on, schedule a call, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's Wednesday. I think we got 3 or 4 days on there that you can go on there and schedule. Go schedule a call. Any more questions for Mark? Mark, do you have any final words?
Ah, this is fun. You guys are all, you guys are on here, so that's really the bottom line. You guys are taking action. You have to take action, and the biggest thing is, especially somebody that's new, that hasn't done real estate or just starting in real estate, you have to look at, if you fail, you have to look at as a learning experience. Don't quit. 85% of people, when they come in, they have fail at something and end up quitting. So just be consistent and really network. That's really what the bottom line is. You just constantly network. And thank you guys for being part of the community, the seller financing group. And it's you guys helped made it grow for what it is. I actually created the group 4 years ago to sell my own properties, and it just blew up. So it wasn't meant to be like this. It was just for me to sell my own properties, but it worked.
Awesome.
Karen, pleasure meeting you. I like to talk to Karen. Karen, let's schedule a call sometimes. I want to know a little bit more about what you do for your DSCR stuff and like that stuff. So I'm always looking for good lenders.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other questions?
Sure, I'm happy to schedule a call. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
Perfect. I will. Yeah, that'd be great. We'll do that. All right. Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you.
All right.
James, Tyler, and who else? Matt. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for having
yeah,
us.
and Jay, yeah, a lot of great. You guys all had some great questions. I like it.
Awesome. All right, guys. That's it for today. If you guys are watching this on the replay, let us know. Replay below because it's going to be on Facebook in a few minutes. So we'll talk to you all later.
Take care,
Be
everyone.
well, people.
See you,
Bye
Mark.
bye.